This is the public forum of Monday, May 8th for the Stratford Town Council. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak, and please keep it to 3 minutes if you can. When you come up, please state your name and address. The first speaker is Mr. John Rich.
Good evening. John Rich, 68 Willow Avenue. First, I'd like to thank all the members of the Town Council for your tireless work, especially during budget season. I recognize the hours that you put into this effort and applaud you for it. I would also, again, like to thank the Board of Education for recognizing the concerns and questions surrounding their financials and agreeing to the operational audit. While the discussion as to where the dollars go between the municipal and the BOE sides of the budget are debated, one thing is clear. This is not a two-sided equation, but three-sided, the third factor being the crushing tax burden we are all facing. There just are not enough dollars to go around with our declining grand list. The surrounding cries from the citizens is that the mill rate cannot go any higher, not by a point, not by even 1/10 of a point. After last year's historic tax rate, the residents of this town desperately need relief. All sides of our budget, both municipal and Board of Education, must tighten their belts. Now, I understand the argument about increasing funding for the children, which has been put out many times, in order for them to succeed. But that has to be balanced with a mill rate that is for the residents and the families of those children in order for them to survive. This year, the best way that we can help our children is to support their parents and their families by providing them with some tax relief so those parents and families can provide their children by keeping a roof over their head and food on the table. With careful review, very modest changes in both the municipal and the BOE budget could occur without raising the mill rate. Fair and even changes, essentially a 50-50 split for each side of the budget, should seriously be considered. One of the lessons that I taught my intern paramedic students was to always remember to treat the patient and not the monitor. Well, the residents of our town are that patient. And despite the data that's on the monitor, when they look you in the eye with that feeling of impending doom from the crushing pain of the tax burden and saying, "Please don't let me die," what are you going to do?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rich. If you could finish up, please.
I therefore encourage the council to listen not to the statistical metadata, but rather to the voices of your constituents, reminding you to keep the promises that many of you offered when you were swept into office, and that is to keep an eye on the financials and to maintain the level, if not reduce the mill rate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker is Patricia Clark Sperling.
Good evening. Patricia Clark Sperling, 186 Holmes Street. I am sure each and every one of you know who I am and know that I am highly opinionated and outspoken, whether you like it or not. I shoot from the hip, like it or not, and I speak honestly and sincerely. Each and every one of you also knows that my husband, Mark, was a school custodian starting when he was 16 years old until last week when he retired, 31 and a half years. He dedicated most of his adult life to his job. In reviewing his personnel records, I noticed that he never took days off and for many years never missed a day until the last few. There is a select group, though, that take days off nearly every week, yet pull weekend overtime, making time and a half on Saturday and double time on Sunday. While this is for the Board of Education to deal with, this council will set their budget tonight. One of the areas of that budget that has been called into question is that of the custodians. I can tell you firsthand that there is waste in that area and elsewhere. There are custodians doubling their base pay with overtime while they walk around with their hands in their pockets all day. They create weekend jobs for 4 or 5 select people with no oversight whatsoever. So when you look at giving a budget increase to the Board of Education, you must look at some of the wasteful spending before doing so. Once you make a decision, you can't go back, and it sets it for the next year as well. This is all on the backs of the taxpayers. Stratford is still very much a blue-collar community, and it has also a huge senior population. Those seniors are on fixed incomes and are being forced out each and every time you make a decision, which will increase our mill rate and the amount we pay in property taxes. The Board of Education has a former administrator who retired, who was hired as an interim superintendent and remained, and yet has a title change every 2 years. This person works part-time, making 6 figures. What's wrong with that picture? Our children are always held hostage with threats of teacher layoffs, building closures, and the like, but the administration still makes sure to increase their own salaries. They aren't doing that great of a job, they aren't being frugal, and why should they be making the exorbitant salaries they are? This council needs to do the right thing. Do not give them a penny more. We gave them twice as much as they should have gotten last year. They can live with that amount for another year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Chris Carroll.
Thank you. My name's Chris Carroll, Sterling House Development Director, 2283 Main Street in Stratford. Just 2 quick things. I want to thank the council for its annual consideration of Sterling House's allocation from the town budget. It is a good investment. Second thing, I want to thank the council chairwoman DePonte for working with me on that resolution I had talked about the last time I was here, the Neighborhood Assistance Act. It's under your 8.6, and the agenda, we're going to have to table it for a procedural manner, but I'm looking forward to being here again in June and for it passing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker is Barbara Heimlich.
Barbara Heimlich, 91 College Street. I've been following the Board of Education saga via newspaper articles, social media, and town meetings. The volleys pitched by both sides of the issue prompted me to do my own independent research. I called area boards of education, former administrators, and educators to get their opinion. I shared with these people paperwork that had been posted regarding the Board of Education budget. Through all their iterations, since they kept revising the budget. So what did I learn? Number one, hands down, Board of Education, teachers, former administrators, etc., all agreed that all Board of Eds are chaotic and poorly run. They are teachers, not business people. That is clear when you look at their budget. Number two, our CEO should be fired. His accounting practices were shoddy and generally unacceptable. Number three, where does the money actually go? It appears that the salaries and the number of personnel at 1000 East Broadway are top-heavy. Do I support education? Absolutely. Do I believe the Board of Education is competent? No, I don't. Last year, Harkins gave the Board of Education one of the biggest increases in history. A move I, quite frankly, viewed as a bribe to get center school back. They emptied the school, they moved students around, and now, of course, it's on the table of what are we going to do about center school? What are we going to do about center school? If I was sitting here on the town council, I wouldn't give them one more dime.
Okay. Next speaker is Stephen Roguskis.
Hi, my name's Steve Roguskis. I live at 94 Noble Street. I'm going to be quick here. As I said last time I spoke to you, I don't envy you the difficult job that you have to try to do the budget. I hope that you have an open and honest discussion with each other tonight. I'm sorry that the system didn't go quite the way some of you would have liked to get here, but here we are. Discussion should happen tonight, and I hope that everybody's got some ideas to save money somewhere in the budget and not raise taxes on people, because it's just been going up and up and up, and it's time to stop that. So I'm hoping you guys can all work together and get this solved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Stephanie Phillips.
Thank you very much tonight. My name is Stephanie Phillips, 41 Yarwood Street. Let me first say that putting a budget together in a town council is like having gum surgery without Novocaine. I feel your pain. So thank you again for volunteering for this torture. In this budget, I ask you to support 4 things that are important to our residents and businesses. 1, we are tired of increasing taxes. Please make taxes go down. Even if it's only $500,000, that's a savings of $80 to $100 back in the taxpayer's pocket. 2, please do not cut services. After 8 years and massive tax increases, I believe there must be enough money to maintain reasonable services. 3, I know everyone supports education. There's no doubt in my mind. More importantly, I hope the BOE audit is completed immediately before we are here again next year asking the same questions. Why? Because I agree there are too many inconsistencies and unanswered questions in the BOE budget. However, we should not leave the teachers' negotiated contracts and the parents and the students with uncertainty. Therefore, I can support a $1.2 million increase in the BOE budget pending this audit. 4, finally, we need to stop raiding the WPCA. We need to stop raiding the enterprise funds. All we are doing is hiding the increases that should have been controlled better. Fix the accounting. I have faith in this council. These are common sense values that I hope that at least 6 people can support. If you do that, you will make history tonight and put Stratford on the right path to the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Frank Parity.
Frank Parity, I live at 798 East Broadway, a long list of luminaries I follow here. Briefly, I wanted to reiterate the other night when we were in the auditorium, I guess the sound wasn't that good. I wished you all wisdom. It takes a lot of wisdom to come up with how to do this. Another word I would ask would be compromise. Compromise is an important word in a democracy. It's an important word in a complex organization. You've got to give up a little, get a little. And finally, the leadership, or to evaluate it, to judge what you're doing. And we have trust in all of you. We know the system's going to work, that we have enough people on the council who know to do the right thing. It is about, and briefly to go back to the auditorium, it was wonderful to see that there are no orphans in Stratford Public Schools. That no matter how bad off a kid is, that some teacher somewhere is going to care deeply about them and do their best for them. And I have no doubt about that. I've been a teacher. I have that kind of feeling towards the students. And it's an appropriate thing that when you're in your people's care, whether they're adults, whether they're little kids, you have to care for their needs. So there's no orphans here in Stratford. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of the older people might be the ones who are being abandoned. And I would hope that they not become orphaned from this organization or from anything where the people who are least able to advocate for themselves seem to be the first ones who are being chopped away at, whose services are not necessary, whose backs are being then burdened by the, by increases, or, that they're, you don't necessarily need medical care in order to be a healthy or, no. We understand the priorities in our society. We understand that there are those who want to take the priorities and turn them upside down. I would suggest that everybody is somebody's significant person. I mean, there are no orphans. There's nobody on the outside of this system. We have a responsibility and obligation to care for everybody, regardless of their circumstances, and especially as people age and their needs increase. There is the future, and there is the challenge to our society. It isn't so much as how to educate the youth, but how to care for those who are the baby boomers who are in front of us, who are going to demand more and more of our resources when we have less and less of them. I wish you all the best wisdom, compromise, leadership. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker is Linda Palermo.
Linda Palermo, 46 Phillip Place. I ask the council to hold the line of an increase in our mill rate. Bring the dog park forward so our children will enjoy it and keep them entertained if they don't have the entertainment at school. Please be accountable for your actions to the taxpayers. Keep the elderly and disabled in mind at all time and keep in step with the ADA. Always think before you act. It can be costly. For the elderly and those on fixed incomes, I ask you to take all of this into consideration when setting the mill rate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Palermo. Next speaker is Dave Fuller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished members of the Town Council. Good to speak to you again. Saw you guys last week in Stratford High. Thank you again for the hard decisions that you're about to make tonight and in future. The reason why I come to you tonight is both out of alarm and out of optimism. I am quite alarmed that there is a budget that's voted on unfavorably to the Town Council. Now, you can vote the way you feel, but if the budget's going to be made today, the citizenry doesn't even know what budget you're voting on. So we could presume that the mayor's proposal, based on the votes on the unfavorable, is getting shot down. Anyone who's gone through a school system knows basic math. So what is the budget? And I'll be sitting around looking tonight as the Town Council meeting, seeing what you deliberate, but I'm concerned that there's no transparency on the subject. Budget workshops are not just for department heads to state their case on why they think their department should be funded. It's also your opportunity in public view, broadcasted on Channel 79 or in live for the studio audience here, I work in advertising, to also see what's going on. And I've sat in those seats. I was a councilman myself, and I've been to budget workshops. In the past, departments have given concessions. They did give some money back. So it's bogus to say that they'll never give anything back. That is a flat-out lie. It depends each year. So again, I'll leave you instead with criticism, but with some optimism and some advice. Don't look at budget time just to do some cuts. This has to be a year-round review. This has to be, look at your ordinance committee. Use your ordinance committee. The fact that you have Bill 1703 in May as your third bill means you're not exercising your full authority. Use your powers. You're the legislature. Be the check and balance. Do your job. But don't just look at cuts. You have to look at the ordinances. Deregulate so the town of Stratford could become a more welcoming community. The more businesses you have and the more residents you have, the more people are paying taxes. Guess what that means? You don't have to raise people's taxes as much, or you don't have to do draconian cuts. You could have it both ways. raise the tax base. That's what it's all about. And the other thing, take a look at an audit. Lead by example. You put the Board of Ed through it. Show the same level of leadership here. Thank you. Give the Board of Ed at least 2%, because that's an investment that would return money back to the taxpayers. You have to pay a little bit to get a little bit, but no, I'm encouraged by the audit. Let's see what it says, and if the audit shows something good, maybe you could give them a little more too. But also lead by example. Put yourselves through an audit as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fuller. Next speaker is Tammy Langston.
My name is Tammy Langston. I live at 205 Wickland Avenue. I'm thankful for the opportunity to address all of you tonight. I am an advocate for public education. I've always supported our schools, our teachers, and students. I'm all for properly funding a budget that supports the success of all of our students. What I am against are funds that are allocated for specific line items that year after year are not used for their intent and purpose. And there are hundreds of thousands of dollars. With every dollar that is not spent on its intended purpose, its intended line item, it is being spent on something that the Finance Committee didn't approve of. And unless it's over $5,000, the Board of Ed members don't have to know or approve it. So how many times does this happen? We'll never know. I'll never know. We don't have access to these reports. Reports that should be made available to every citizen of this town without having to request it through the Freedom of Information Act. We should have the same access to how our tax dollars are being spent at the Board of Ed as we do at the Town Hall, without being bullied by employees and elected officials in an effort to hide the truth. The fact is the COO and superintendent have presented budgets with no actuals for years and got away with it. But this year they presented it and it was shocking. The data was flawed in a multitude of ways, and I'm sure every one of you are aware of it. The reports provided by the COO to the Finance Committee, there was a difference of $2 to $3 million in the actual totals and the budgeted totals for the fiscal years 2014 and 15 and 15-16. I have their reports, and I can give them to you. It was sloppy, and it was inexcusable. It begged to be looked at, and we did. We were given excuse after excuse for errors, but no one ever took responsibility for any of it. Accountability, accuracy, truthfulness, it's all part of their job. That's what we pay them for. That's what we should expect, and that's what we should demand. The good news is that now an audit is being arranged to look into their numbers and accounting practices. The bad news is that it won't be done until after you decide the town budget. So my appeal to each of you is not to increase the Board of Ed budget this year, as it can't be lowered if the audit shows malfeasance. Every year our mill rate goes up. Every year I get another notice from my mortgage company that says there's been an increase in our taxes. Our families can't keep up with the increases. Our elderly on fixed incomes are not able to keep up with these increases. Our single income families are not able to keep up with the increases, and our businesses are not able to keep up with these increases.
Okay, if you could
We're
finish
all
up, please.
waiting to see when the 40 mill rate will be breached, and then our property values will decrease when we have to sell low just to balance the cost of our high taxes.
Okay, thank you very much.
All
Thank you
that
very
I
much.
said, I understand you all have a very difficult job to do, and I do hope that the BOE will consider some of the recommendations that have been suggested so our tax dollars are used more efficiently. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, next speaker is Henry Bruce.
Henry Bruce, 37 Jefferson Street. I looked up a word in the dictionary today to remind myself what the word activist means, and I realized it perfectly defines who and what I am. I'm a sucker for causes, and I've gotten involved in a bunch of causes in this town. And then Vinnie Chase reminded me of something at a BOE meeting about the concept of an organized opposition, and I realized, yeah, that's sort of what an activist does, kind of organizes an opposition, but we organize an opposition to right a wrong. First time it was the Shakespeare Theater when Harkins locked the doors and we got 1,400 people to sign a petition in 3 weeks. The next time was when I met Tina 3 years ago over the budget, when after the election the mayor was going to raise our taxes 6%, and I thought that was outrageous. And 700 signatures later, they backed off, and that's how the budget hole was created. And next thing we knew, WPCA came along. And I thought WPCA, based on what happened, the way it went down, was going to be the event for Stratford. But it wasn't until I got myself involved in the latest cause, which was looking at the black hole, which is called the Board of Education when it comes to how money is spent. And in digging in, realized we had another big thing that needed to be exposed. But based on the way I've seen things conducted with a lot of people here in this room, if I look around this group and around this room, a lot of people that I've gotten to know through causes. And I've reached the point where I think tonight really is ultimately the biggest night in the history of Stratford, because I think this group has an opportunity to do something, which is show that you've been listening to the people over the last 5 years, give the people what they want, which is no more taxes and accountability across the board. Everybody in municipal government and the Board of Ed needs to feel the pain that the people of this town have felt over the last 7 or 8 years since the Great Recession. Everyone needs to feel it equally. And so I'm very confident that tonight you will do that, and this can indeed be an historic event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bruce. Next speaker is Andrea Veilleux.
Good evening. Andrea Veilleux, 441 Washington Parkway. If I was sitting near Mr. Fuller, I would think he looked at my notes because we almost have a similar address to the town council. But I wanted to touch upon the budget and the budget workshops and to reiterate that I also agree with what Mr. Fuller stated in saying that you need to hold those because it's an opportunity for the departments to sell their budget, to present it to the public, to have the rationale explained, and the education side, and then also opportunity for compromise. The public needs to be informed, and I'm on the other side now. I know that having been an elected official, it's easy to have access to ponies and agendas and the supplemental information that goes with the agendas, but when you're on the other side, if it's not posted on a website and the supplemental material included, you don't have access to what's going on. So it's really important that you include the taxpayers in that process. Last year there was a historical increase, and if this year it's lower or less or zero, it's still, over the last 2 years, a significant increase on the taxpayers. I got involved when I heard things like there were questions on errors in the budget and the presentation, and there were statements made saying there was not money available for things such as the drama funds, when you looked at the line item and you saw that there were actually funds available. So I questioned, where did those funds go? I would like to still question the overspending on certain line items, who's authorizing overspending on certain line items, and then there's surpluses on other line items, so it is the budget variance, and that's not a way to run a budget. Also, tonight you have the CIP and the CEP, and it's a great term I've learned that we can find money. Anyone who does that often here, I wish you'd come to my home and help me find that money. So I don't want you to kick the can down the road. I really want you to solve the problem. I want you to look at solutions and find some compromise. I want you to make the cuts that are necessary and alleviate the tax burden to the taxpayer. Grow the grand list. That's something that should be essential. That is what needs to happen for Stratford. So again, I'd ask you to look at this budget and make the appropriate cuts. Be the leaders that you are elected to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Joe Paul. Joe Paul? Oh, there you are. Sorry.
I didn't have far to walk. Joe Paul, 47 Harborview Place. And my compliments to Madam Chair and the Town Council for these rigorous days you're going through. I know this is not easy. But what I have to say, I've listened to a lot of the issues and comments raised about this budget this year, and I don't think we're going to really hear a real solution tonight. And why? It's really because there's really no fundamental changes being discussed on how this administration can re-engineer itself to be more efficient. We can't have those discussions right now because the budget needs to be approved within the next couple of weeks. But what we have to do is start thinking about the future and future budgets. It's not about sitting down in front of a department head or looking at numbers and trying to figure out what we can cut, because those are small numbers from where we really need to go. Well, we're living during some challenging times in this town, just like all the other towns. And we really got to start thinking more innovatively, and we really got to start looking at how we want to re-engineer this government of ours to make it more efficient and more lean. And until we start making those hard decisions and talking about those things, we're going to be right back here again next year with the same dilemma. And so when this meeting is over, we're going to keep our fingers crossed that both the Board of Education and the town can survive whatever number gets approved by this council. Now, we can vote on a flat budget, but that makes for a very reactive government, which is not good for the citizens of this town, and it certainly won't be good for the children that go to our schools. So what I'm going to do is recommend that, for now, based on what we know, all we can do is take that bogey, whether it's 1.9 million, whether it's 2 million, whatever that is, and because there's an unknown on both the Board of Education side and the town side on what's going to happen with that budget, the best thing we can do right now is compromise and split that bogey in half and take half from the town and the other half from the Board of Ed and move forward. Because you really don't have a fundamental clue as to where that number's going to come from. So let's all put some skin in the game. Let's make good and make do with a compromise and move forward. And get ready, more importantly, get ready now for next budget cycle. Start thinking about how we're going to re-engineer what we're doing today so we don't have to sit here and wish and hope that we have a fundamental reason on why we're budgeting and where we're cutting and where we're going to become more efficient. And then we'll start to see our mill rate come down and this town will start running better again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to the next speaker, I just want to point out that at 7:30, that's supposed to be the last time that somebody can sign up to speak. So if you haven't signed up and you wish to, there is a sign-up sheet. Okay, and if you could do that promptly, please. Next speaker is Greg Can.
Thank you. Let them sign up first. Thank you. Guys, sign up. Sign up first.
Gregory Can, 234 Klondike Street, Stratford. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council. I just wanted to make a couple of general points about the process we've all been experiencing over the last few weeks, months. Now, everyone knows I'm really fervent about the WPCA. And when the mayor's budget came out and it made no accommodations for the overcharges the WPCA was giving back to the town, I was disappointed. I thought that each of us would be united in assuring that the WPCA would be right-sized, meaning that it would not pay more than the rate holders needed to pay in regards to their relationship with the town. Everyone at WPCA pays the same $396. A senior woman with her cat living in a one-bedroom co-op pays the same as a family with 5 bedrooms on an acre lot that's worth millions of dollars. That's a regressive tax. And a regressive tax is not fair to the low-income households. The further insult is that 8% of the people in the town don't pay that regressive tax. They're exempt from the WPCA fees because they're not connected to the sewers. So when the town is overcharging the WPCA and then using that money to, quote, balance its budget, 8% of the households don't have to pay, and the other 92% are paying a higher burden of their gross income than they should be. So tonight, we all should be very attentive to right-sizing the WPCA expenses. Over the last 7 years, the town has taken roughly $7 million out of the WPCA. That's in overcharges, that's hitting against the revolving fund. None of the enterprise funds should be diluted because we are not responsible for balancing our budget. Those are strategic funds that have the intention of providing capital monies to improve our infrastructure, not for simple short-term filling the gap because we don't want to be honest with our constituents. The town side, I want to apologize to all the department managers for not spending enough time with them in my short time on the council or even before the council. They gave us opportunity to talk one-on-one. They stood here and gave us an opportunity to talk to them as a group. I thought all my questions had been answered from the last few years as I've collected information. And I'm working with the group here, many of you, on a budget proposal that will make selective cuts. One last point, please, Chairman. Board of Ed has $3 million of money and in its hands that if they just right-sized their budget and executed cost savings initiatives, they would not need to come back to the town for any more funds. There could be questions about the validity of some of those, but it needs to be looked at honestly and not just tabled and ignored. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Walter Rimkunis.
Good evening. Walter P. Rimkunis, 425 2nd Avenue. I originally stated my feelings at the last meeting. I feel that it's not your duty, but the mayor's and his Mr. Timiak and the group to come up with a reasonable tax. You just don't go ahead and everybody throw something into the pot and then you add it all up and say, hey, this is our tax. You set a figure. This is what we're going to have. This is what we have to get to. None of this baloney of just every department say, oh, I gotta have. You look into each one of them and you can cut. There is fat in each department. Whether it's public works, fire, police, and all those, they can be looked at and cut. Cut good. It's funny, last year again, you gave a big thing to the Board of Education. They needed all the money they could get. Boom. All right, they gave 8 salary increases to quite a few, and they got stuff back into the program. They got all that money, but then, all of a sudden they can find $600,000 that's been sitting in the corner for nothing. It's not been doing. I bet if they went through it again, maybe this order will pick it up. All this extra little bits here and there, and put it in that pile, and we can cut back on a lot of the things. Don't cut the arts. I'm a big proponent, I think that's the right word, proponent of the arts, music, art, and all the others. It's good for the kids. My kids have gone through it. Other kids have gone through it, and it's done them good. I say, in my opinion, as I stated before, I would have just taken this budget, turned around, and say, Mr. Harkins, here it is, fix it so it's reasonable, and then come back to us. You have 5 days to do it. Do it. That's your responsibility. That's what you are getting paid for, not you people. You've got the mayor's got the people there, Mr. Timiak and all the other in the finance department and all. I'll cut it right off. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Brian Frazier.
Brian Frazier, 196 Oakland Street. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am both a tax-paying homeowner here in Stratford and an employee of the Board of Education. I want to begin by emphasizing that just because I work for the Board of Education as the coordinator of art, music, health, and physical education, that does not negate my interests as a taxpayer or a citizen of the town. If anything, it enhances them. I have a vested interest in seeing my property value rise, and one of the ways I can do that is by ensuring a quality school system in Stratford. I am deeply concerned by the comments I have seen and heard about students, parents, teachers, and administrators who spoke in favor of the budget. Our concerns about the town and Board of Education budget, as well as our opinions, are equally as valid and important as any other citizen in Stratford. My immediate concern is to try to preserve programs and staffing for our schools. We are truly at a crossroads with both the budget for the Board of Education and the education of our youth in Stratford. After many years of maintenance budgets, last year we were given a large increase and have made investments to improve educational outcomes for students. We have turned a corner and are seeing real progress in all of our programs and curricular areas. Taking more than $1 million out of the status quo budget hurts children. It cannot be done without cutting some of the school staff. I can assure you that there is no wasted staff in the schools. All of the teachers, secretaries, and custodians and aides are working very hard. I work at central office. Today I began my workday at 7 a.m., spent the first hour of the day at central office, then visited 3 schools who are preparing for concerts this month, returned to my office for lunch for 30 minutes before leaving again to visit 2 other schools for rehearsals, and then I worked with my teachers writing curriculum until 5 p.m. I work hard for the children in Stratford to ensure they receive a high-quality education and to ensure that the whole child is educated, not just in the content areas that take standardized tests. I work with some wonderful professionals who do the same. At this point in time, I would ask that you please put aside any adult differences in order to provide support so that we can continue our programs, both curricular and extracurricular, for the children of this community. Again, I want to emphasize that any cuts in the Board of Education budget, $1 million or larger, will result in cuts to school staff, many of whom live in town and would be harmed due to a lack of employment. I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. The next speaker, well, I saw Amanda Meeson come in. I was not sure if you wanted to speak now. Okay. Okay, Ray Quiles is the next speaker.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'm one of the few people who's not here to talk about the budget, so I appreciate you taking a couple minutes to listen to me. My name is Ray Keelas. I've been a lifelong resident of Stratford, and I recently purchased my first home at 107 Beers Place. The property between 107 Beers Place and 79 Beers Place is owned by the town and has been neglected for at least a decade, and according to lifelong residents of the street, it has never been maintained to a proper standard. The property is too small to be a buildable lot and has a runoff sewer running through the middle of it that would make the property virtually undevelopable. It currently costs the town taxpayer dollars to maintain on the very few occasions they choose to, despite several complaints by myself and other residents of the street. It poses a liability to the town, as several trees have fallen on the property, which the town refuses to clean up after, again, several complaints. During the winter months, the sidewalk is never cleaned unless I do so. The sidewalk is cracked and uplifted in several areas. It's cracked and uplifted in several areas, posing a danger to the many walkers and the children that frequent the street to access Longbrook Park. If I don't spend my time or money cutting down the weeds in the summer, they quickly exceed 6 feet tall. It is my request that the town abandon the property to me through the appropriate legal channels, as they have done so many times in the past, and return approximately $60,000 to the tax roll and remove all liability regarding the property from the town. My neighbors at 79 Beers Place have agreed to sign a waiver, which would place all ownership and responsibility on me to bring the property back to a standard set by the neighborhood, which it currently falls very short of. Because my taxes will increase greatly, even more, and I will have to spend thousands of my own dollars to undo the decades of neglect on the part of the town, I am in no position to purchase the property. The entire neighborhood has supported this action, as I've spoken to many of them on many occasions, and has been an eyesore for all of them, decreasing their property values and negatively affecting their general quality of life anytime they're outside. I think the tax revenue and release of liability benefits the town as well, creating a winning situation for all those involved. Thanks for my time.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last speaker is Paul Tavares.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. Paul Tavares, 1372 South Ave. And I just want to reiterate a lot of what my fellow Stratfordites have been saying, that, well, I can share the same sentiment with a lot of the comments. And the bloodletting really has to stop. Most of my friends that I grew up with have left the area because they no longer can afford to live in this area. And now that I'm retired, I'm feeling the pinch, too, of my fiscal budget. My wife and I are just pretty much flirting with the idea of looking for another place to live, but my heart is here in this town, and I understand that you have very difficult decisions to make, but any more increases may just result in more people leaving, and then we'll be in even more deeper trouble than we are. So I'm certainly against any kind of increase at this time. I feel that we need to do with what we have. And I know you all make the right decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And that adjourns the public forum. Town council meeting starts promptly at 8. Thank you.